Chris, you can just nod if you. Okay, cool. All right, so we'll get started. It's 6:31.
There's Joan. Good. Hi, Joan.
Oh, good. Okay.
We'll call this meeting to order.
Yep. Did everyone get a chance to look over the meeting minutes from last time? Yes. Okay. We make a motion to accept the minutes from May 23rd, 2022. Can I get a second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
6. Okay. Thank you. It's done. And we did receive a notice of resignation from Reed Karen from the task force. He left the planning board, and in leaving the planning board, he also had to leave the task force. So we'll be appointing a new member from the planning board to work on the task force in his place.
Let's switch the next 2 points on the agenda.
Yeah, so then we're going to move the housing plan and the comp plan forward so that Stephen, who's here, can discuss that. So the question was whether or not we have to incorporate the housing plan in the comprehensive plan. And the answer is yes, we do. So in the Community Housing Fund Advisory Board creation resolution on January 7th of 2022, it states that the housing plan must be incorporated into the comprehensive plan for the town of Shelter Island. And then in the Peconic Bay Region Community Housing Fund, item 7D states that the housing plan shall be an element of the town's comprehensive plan. So according to
What are those two documents are, may I just ask a question? I
Yeah.
should raise my hand. Those two documents are resolutions by the town council, is that
No.
it?
This one is, this
Do
is,
you want,
yes, Stephen, you go
do you
for
want me
it.
to explain? Even though you did a splendid job already.
I'm just-
But yeah, so, all right,
Better.
so we first start with the state legislation, because that's what gave us the authority to, enact the Community Housing Fund local law. So town law section 64-K as in kite, 7D as in dog, states that the town housing plan shall be an element of the town's comprehensive plan. That's crystal clear. It shall be an element of the town's comprehensive plan. And then based on this state enabling legislation, we adopted Town Code Section 52, particularly Town Code Section 52-6, B as in boy 2, which states that the housing plan shall be incorporated, again, no wiggle room, into the comprehensive plan for the town of Shelter Island. Now, how it's incorporated is open for discussion. And I would suggest that it be a subsection of the housing chapter. So you're going to have your housing chapter, and it'll be one subsection thereof, maybe entitled community housing. And it would be part of that. Now, it could, if we entitle it community housing, it can be fleshed out more. It doesn't have to be exclusively the housing plan, but that's where the housing plan will be parked within the comprehensive plan. Again, we have no option other than to have the housing plan be made part of the comprehensive plan. And then independent of that, the town has the burden of updating the plan every 5 years. So that'll be perpetually updated and then as amended, made part of the comprehensive plan.
So Stephen, you okay. So you're saying the housing plan must be updated every 5 years and the comprehensive plan as well, if not more often.
Well, no.
As a
not
living
necessarily.
document,
I
no?
mean, you could just, let's go take a half step back.
Good.
So let's pretend that it was only, it's more question for Stephen. When you say part of a comprehensive plan, could it literally just be an exhibit to the comprehensive plan where there's a housing section it says when we're thinking of this snapshot in Shelter Island town history, there is a discussion as to whether to do more around community housing. There is this committee that has looked at it. Their recommendations are attached here to as Exhibit A. Would that be making a part of the plan with no additional commentary at its lowest form, or do we have to do more than that?
I would argue no. I would argue that because it shall be an element of the town's comprehensive plan is the statutory language. And I believe an element would be a subsection versus just a mere exhibit and a reference. I think the comprehensive plan is a guide, for zoning legislation. And I think that this subsection has to serve as a guide for community housing.
Could you clarify? I'm sorry, it's not so clear, your voice, Stephen. Could you clarify? So you're saying it cannot just be a subsection at the lowest level that Peter just tried to describe for us, but it has to be something more substantial? Is that what you're saying? Just to clarify for myself.
Are you saying, Lily?
No,
Like to drive some suggestions, drive some action points, or is that the question you're asking?
Well, it could mean, but at what level?
Does it have to?
Just an appendix
well,
or-
I'm saying yes. I'm saying that it has to be a subchapter, subsection, whatever verbiage, terminology you want to use, but it has to be a critical component of the overall housing chapter. And there should be action items generated from that.
And Stephen, to be clear, I was saying it still would be a subsection where we describe what had been done, which the same way we've been looking at other elements of our community. And we say, here's what's being done in 2022 on Shelter Island. There's this document that's been produced with recommendations. And here's the full list of it, as opposed to us reciting it in the plan.
Correct.
I guess going to Lily's question, and maybe some of the things people are thinking about, would we have to make our own separate suggestions policy-wise, whether or not they agree with whatever proposal had come out from the community housing board's recommendations? Because that seems potentially problematic, where they're spending a lot of time on this and are pretty well versed in these issues. And then we would impose our own judgment on top of that. It's a little.
No. I would say this, what we learned in law school, like state supremacy law. I would say it occupies the field in community housing. I would say that, you don't, the work has been done for you in that area. I wouldn't, it would be redundant for you guys to, focus your efforts there.
May I make a point? I do believe that by doing this, you are taking the housing recommendations outside of the purview of our advisory function as a comprehensive planning committee. And I would like to note for the record that this committee has been thwarted in making our comprehensive plan by the lack of provision of independent consultants. I'd like this in the record, and it is particularly notable in the case of the housing chapter.
Can you repeat yourself? I'm not following what you're saying.
I'm very clear. I'm saying this is.
I'm asking you for clarification,
I'm not a
so therefore
lawyer.
it's not clear. I just want you to.
You've made the point, Stephen, that this is not a constitutional issue, that the town has every right to incorporate, I think your words were, in some way, the housing recommendations into our chapter. And I'm saying that I object to the extent that our advisory function in making a comprehensive plan, and particularly in terms of housing, because right now we're talking about housing, has been hindered, thwarted by the failure of the town to provide us with what Peter was referring, expertise, outside consultants. I'm sorry if I missed.
Is that what Peter
That's
said?
definitely not what I was saying.
Yes, Well, you were talking, do we go up and make recommendations up and against a committee that has been working on it with consultants?
No, you
were
I'm
paid
saying,
housing.
in this, I'm saying I'll let Peter speak. I'm sorry, I'm talking.
I think if Stephen was helpful in answering that, we need a subsection in the plan that addresses community housing.
Right.
We should specifically in some way address whatever plan and recommendations they produce. We could, if we wanted to, produce our own recommendations on top of that. My understanding is that committee has its own set of consultants that has been guiding it in producing that plan. I have no position on whether we have been prejudiced by any consultants or not with respect to this element of the comprehensive plan. I just wanted to understand what our obligations are with respect to the document they're producing.
Thank you. And I just want to clarify what I'm trying to say, which is that as a comprehensive view of the situation on the island, given the finite resources, given the potential threats of building out to a certain extent, I strongly state that I do not feel we have been allowed to do the work that a comprehensive plan needs to do. We have not been given the remit to have independent consultants who are not just looking to create a plan for housing, affordable housing or community housing, but who are looking at the extent to which we should be working on housing and what fashion we should be doing this.
That's what the.
Thank you. I just would like this in the record. And
That's what the housing plan is doing.
it has a remit
that
its
plan.
its consultants are hired to produce a housing plan.
Yes.
It is conceivable that our committee could have decided, I mean, look at the
I'm
94.
looking at the 94 plan, and their recommendation is that a basic goal of this plan is to assure that a supply of affordable housing on Shelter Island exists over time, adequate to serve the diversity of the Shelter Island population, and that any new housing be developed in a manner harmonious with the island environment, and then it continues on. In 2008, recommendation.
No, you can't speak. Sorry, Patrick, you have to.
In 2008, closely monitor the progress of the Community Housing Committee and plan and ensure quarterly reports are made available to the public. Encourage the use of apartments over businesses to provide housing and assist local businesses. Consider enacting clustering code as part of a zoning code.
Right.
So this is not a new thing. This is just the actual plan that should have been done back in 2008 when the fair housing law was developed.
And it should have
We're just
been under the
catching up.
purview of our committee to create.
No.
But I personally am for affordable housing that does not use a TDR, which are not needed, that has housing permanently affordable. Because those of us who try to speak about the independent role of this committee are often labeled anti-housing or elitist. So I want to make
You have a
this clear. No, I do not feel that I have been able on this committee to deal with housing in an appropriate advisory fashion.
We haven't gotten there.
I don't want to make.
But how can you not
clarify? I just want to clarify that the TDRs
I know what they
separate
are.
from the housing. The housing plan is separate from the TDRs.
I
The housing plan
understand.
can happen with or without.
I understand that. I
It's an
understand.
independent study.
I understand.
Okay, just
I
clarifying that because
Okay, and can I just chime in?
It didn't sound like there was separation.
You presented yourself the TDR and talked about how it was important for this island and for housing. So let's step back carefully when we trade. who
That was a
looking at what.
clarification for people to understand how to.
It was a set of PowerPoints and it was incorporated and it is incorporated into the, what is it called? The Community Housing Fund for Preservation Advisory Board or something like this.
No,
Incorporated
Let Stephen cover this
in
because
Yeah.
in the material that is given out, that is the way we should do it. Well, I just, in all the.
An option. It's a tool in
Okay,
the.
okay, the TDR discussion is extremely premature. And it seems to be used as a red herring here to, we engage with a consultant to develop a generic environmental impact statement. That is a condition precedent for us to even think about having a TDR program. That is an exhaustive review of all the environmental and other impacts of the TDR program island-wide. It looks at sending districts, it looks at receiving districts. So until we get that information, no one can have an intelligent conversation about TDRs. And truth be told, TDRs are not a condition preceding for community housing. Increased density can occur without TDRs. Increased septic flow can happen without our own local TDR program. It can happen directly with, so it's just, I don't understand why you throw TDR out there, like, again, it's gaslighting. So
It was
the community housing plan that we were discussing today, the community housing plan is not only done by the consultant, but it's done with input from the Community Housing Fund Advisory Board. They review it, they make recommendations. Then guess what? It goes in front of the town board for their review. And then it gets ultimately adopted and made part of this. So there's a lot of review that is occurring with this plan. And then again, the state law is crystal clear. It must be an element of the town's comprehensive plan. And that's exactly what we're going to do, is adhere to state law. And we're also going to adhere to our own town law that we enacted.
Could we hear some of the other questions? I see a number of hands of committee members up.
Because she has her hand up.
Is that me, Meg? Sorry.
You, sorry.
Okay, thank you. And good evening, everybody. Apologies for not being there in person. So Stephen, thank you for joining us and appreciate some of your comments. And I do want to make sure that we keep a couple of things at the center of what we're doing here, which is one, this is a comprehensive plan, right? I know we're speaking specifically about housing here, but there's obviously a multitude of chapters that we collectively are writing here. And to your point, it does guide zoning. There's, I think, so many interrelated pieces here that sometimes I feel like we should make sure that everyone understands the 50,000 foot level, and then how those, if I can say, pieces of the jigsaw fit together. I think that might be worth reviewing. The other word that you brought up, Stephen, and thank you, is the word independence. And I think, Lily, this is where you're coming to a little bit, is given our role is advisory, I think we feel an obligation to not only the town board, but to the town as a whole, that we are as a committee, as a board, reviewing all of these items. And again, as you mentioned, Stephen, that there are corresponding specific actions. And I think that is something that we heard from the community in our meeting last Monday. And I was glad to see that we're going to be doing additional workshops. So I think if we can somehow just remember that those are the things that we're trying to do, but at the same time, make sure that everyone understands how all of this fits together, right? Because as you said, like, we'll start talking about TDRs or another area, but I think it's always important to put it into context. If I could say it that way, but I do think the word independence is important for us to keep in mind. And I appreciate the clarity around where this needs to fit into the plan. But I also, Peter, to your point, agree that if we come up as a committee with some other specific actions that we feel are important for the plan, then I think we need to discuss those and be open and respectful to inclusion thereof. So I'm trying to just make sure that I guess I'm understanding this, but put a couple of those points out there. And I think there's a couple of others that may feel similarly.
Yeah, if I
Go
could
ahead.
just respond to that real quick.
Yeah.
So just so we're clear, this only speaks to the community housing subsection. So
Correct.
housing broadly, yes.
Right.
that's in your
Exactly.
purview independently. This is community housing. The plan has to be, incorporated. Now, if there's some compelling reason that you disagree with certain facets of the housing plan and you have different action items, of course, that could be discussed. But the community housing plan will be part of the comprehensive plan, regardless if you disagree with what's in the plan.
Understood. And I think that's something we need to, obviously we need to make sure that we are discussing these things and getting community input so that we, as representatives, right? Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Also, just while we have the bully pulpit here, just to everyone in the community that might be paying attention, the broader Shelter Island community, it's really imperative that people fill out the survey for the community housing plan, because that is going to be a big, if not a major part of the basis for the community housing plan that eventually emerges. So if you care, you really need to and encourage people around you to fill out that survey. It's crucial. It's what they're using to build the plan.
Yeah, so the consultant's not the author.
Right.
The residents are the author of this plan. And it's coming, and it's gonna be, it goes from the residents through to the representatives of the Community Housing Advisory Board, through to the consultants they're just doing the skeleton, putting everything together and giving the tools to get the information from the residents. This isn't a top-down plan that's coming in from high above. This is granular and that's why it's very important that everyone with all different views on community housing, those for, those against, whatever, come out and come to those listening sessions and have your opinion heard. Come to town board meetings. We have, at a town board meeting, at the end, you could speak to any subject you want to speak about. Come speak about community housing. You have those opportunities, you have those venues. And then also, all right.
Sorry, Stephen. John, you have your hand up, and then Wendy, you're next.
Yes, Mike, if we stick to the same format that we've been using when we write each of our chapters for the comprehensive plan, at the end of them, we have these three sections: the challenges, the goals and objectives, and the action items. I think in those three topics there, that we can look at what was done by the Community Housing Board, and we can then put our little twist or spin on any of those things based on how we rank or those objectives, those action plans, and what they are. And I think that's where we can be putting our signature on this. Just a suggestion, as an idea. The other thing I'm a little concerned about as far as the opportunity for people to respond to the community housing questionnaire, there are people who just are not computer savvy. This is going to be, again, a challenge for people to express their opinion. And it's really important to reach many of those people because they're the people who need the housing. And I don't know what we're doing to solve that problem, but it's definitely a problem.
Well, I'll bring that up to Liz, the head of Liz Hantley at Chapab, and just to make sure that they're thinking about that. It's an important point, John.
Yeah, and there are paper copies at the meetings themselves.
Yeah.
But maybe I can see if we can get some here with the Dropbox that people can just actually hand in hard copies.
Yeah.
Wendy?
And I think, I'm sorry, if I could just check, John, that's a very good suggestion as far as, because whatever format the housing plan is, it is, and you're going to have to convert it into comprehensive plan lingo and put it. And I think as far as action items and interpreting the plan, that's where the comprehensive plan advisory committee is going to come into play. Absolutely.
Wendy?
So based on what Stephen said a moment ago and just repeated, I'm a little concerned because, to use Petra's metaphor, if we look at this 50,000 feet view, the whole thing should be kind of fit together. And to introduce another metaphor, sort of like a jigsaw puzzle. So every chapter is integrated to other chapters. And if this is going to be kind of, I'm going to use kind of an, sort of a slanted word, plopped in there, and this is what's happening regardless, it's kind of like putting a piece of jigsaw from some other puzzle into ours, unless, of course, there's a chance this committee has, and the community, to kind of massage it and make sure that it does connect to the other goals that we have through the other chapters, the other areas of the island. I guess that's my concern.
No, there will be an interplay. But again, the state legislation is what it is. We can't change that. It has to be made part of the comprehensive
Well,
plan,
I
the
don't think
plan
we're
itself.
disagreeing
So
with
that,
that.
so that incongruous jigsaw puzzle piece has to be fit in somehow. And I like the word you use, massage. Yes, there should be interplay between the other chapters and community housing, as long as the spirit and the sum and substance of the housing plan is met and it's massaged with others. And I agree with you.
So then that's a kind of fait accompli that then everything else should move around to fit. Is that what you're hinting at?
no.
Again, that's what the state legislation is. It says it has to be part of the comprehensive plan and also our town code. I'm sorry?
There's a couple different parts of the plan that are like this that are large, 800-foot boulders that we have to sort of build stuff around. But understanding what Stephen's telling us, that comprehensive plan advisory committee is not going to necessarily get a second bite at the apple. If people have concerns about the plan that's being produced on the housing end, they should be working with the housing committee on that and expressing those opinions there to shape a plan that they think takes into account all community considerations. And like John said, we can maybe make recommendations as to which elements could be prioritized first. But like Stephen said, this is going to be part of the comprehensive plan, but we don't get to rewrite what they're doing.
Right.
Very well said, Peter.
Yeah. And, you are more than welcome to participate with the housing group while they're writing the plan. Absolutely go to the meetings while they're discussing their procedures and their chapters and the plan itself. Participate. Does anyone else have a question about this?
I see Bill has his hand. Bill.
Well, we usually wait till the end of the meeting to
Oh, okay,
this is,
sorry.
this is sort of our work session.
Oh, no, I didn't know who Bill was. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's okay. Okay. So if everyone's good with this, we're going to move forward. The next one was discussing the workshop from 7/18. So we got a lot of good feedback. We had 7 comments come in online through the comment section, and then we had all the comments from the actual workshop with everybody here. And I think we've incorporated all of them into the chapters. So please go look at the SharePoint, look at them all. I'm going to check and see if there are any more edits before we have another open meeting, and then I'm going to put them back up for everybody to look at and see. We did reach out to Kim Nolan because she had some suggestions on the H zoning, and we did our best to write down what she said in the workshop, and we sent it to her for her comment. And she's out of the country, but she'll get back to us when she gets back.
Were there any, I have a generalized question for the committee. Were there any comments at the workshop or, after that anybody really disagreed with, wouldn't like to see added? I didn't find any of them problematic at all in that sense. I thought that they were all good comments to be added. And so that's what we did. So just kind of checking back here to make sure that there's nobody here with objections to what was suggested to us.
And I'll show you the ones that were online.
That'd be helpful.
Because they didn't get, a lot of them were discussed in the meeting, and then it was just follow-up clarification.
And also not all.
Have they been posted? Have they been posted yet? The corrections yet, Meg?
Yes, the corrections are on the SharePoint. They're buried in the chapters, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And the chapters were labeled public workshop.
Good, thank you.
Community input, I
Thank
think
you.
is how I labeled them. So let's see.
I just had one comment. I think there's still the question about the timeline, by when do people get their comments in on the chapters? What is the overall time frame for this process? I know we're going to talk about the next set of public workshops. So I think that's probably one, big request and omission that we currently have right now.
Petra, I don't know. I'm sort of comfortable keeping everything in, labeling everything draft until.
No, absolutely. No, I think my point was just, you know, by when do we expect to have these drafts done? Like, are we talking about January of 23? You know, we kind of expect the next public workshops. Maggie gave us a bunch of dates, right? So can we give the community, because we are imploring involvement, participation, commentary, can we put something out there that just kind of says, this is what the time frame looks like over the next 6 months, right? So that people have an idea when the quote unquote deadline is, if you will. And I know there's some activity that will continue, but I think just generally.
So the related question, given that I think we've said at a prior meeting, we're going to have to go back and potentially edit some chapters based on some of the big boulders. Just as a reminder, when is the housing plan expected? It's like November, October?
End of September, early
Yeah.
October.
So like for stuff, is there anything else like that that's out there that will potentially cause us to revisit prior work product?
Well, yeah, I mean, the environmental impact study, when that's done.
That's done.
Well, we're not sure. We're looking into consultants.
Trying to get
We're
that
Trying to
rushed up a bit.
switch things.
Not rushed up, that's a terrible word, but moved up a bit.
More
'Cause-
expeditious.
yeah.
So I'm not sure. That's part of the delay in having a solid, rock solid timeline. But what I'm hoping to do is with the public workshop dates that I sent out to everybody, once we settle on those, have the deadline be 2 weeks before so that we can incorporate any comments and stuff. Everybody can look it over, add any more comments so that by the time the public workshop comes out, it's been open to the public for at least another week for them to review and read everything that's been incorporated so that when we come to the workshop and the public's there, then they know what the next, like the draft looks like. So I want to try to make the deadlines 2 weeks before the public workshops. And then we have on most of these, looking at the dates, our CPAC meeting is following that public workshop. So I'm kind of hoping to get a pattern down where the public gets their comments in 2 weeks before we incorporate the comments. It goes back to the CPAC. You guys look it over. We have the public workshop and then we have our CPAC meeting. So, I threw dates out all the way through December. And so go through your calendars, let us know what works, what doesn't, and we'll go with, the majority.
And these are choices in each month.
Yeah, so we tried to do multiple dates that worked with the town calendar so that we didn't have major conflicts with other committees and groups.
And so the goal is
things like that.
one public workshop a month. So you'll see there's 3 choices in September, so.
Yeah, we tried to do like 2 or 3 choices a month, depending on the month. November, we didn't have a ton of options because of the holidays. It's like 2 big holiday weeks. But otherwise we tried to do 3 options a month. But there's a lot of night meetings and stuff in town hall, so it's kind of hard to, and we might move some of the meetings to other locations depending on the topic.
Yeah.
But that will kind of come into play once we know what dates, what chapters we're on, all that good stuff. So some of the things that we incorporated, John had the comment about using the word indentured in that first chapter of cultural resources, and we included that. And then we included Kim's comments on the historic H zone, and we're waiting for clarification from her before we move forward with that. And we also want Stephen to look it over and make sure that it all makes sense. And then let's see, cultural resources. And then I have Lily's suggestion that under action items, making item number 2 a subcategory of item number 1. Here, I'll just pull it up. That'll be easier. Then everyone can see it, because otherwise it doesn't make sense unless you have a visual.
Meg, are you in
Could you just
SharePoint?
clarify the name of the folder where the comments have been added recently?
Yes. So I put the comments. Oh, I know what I need to do. This is what I'll do. I'm going to make in the community comprehensive plan advisory committee. I'm going to share my screen, Coco. Okay. In comp plan chapters, I'm going to add a folder. And it's going to be community input. And then in that folder, I am going to put the spreadsheet that has the comments that we've received. So you click on that. And you'll be able to see the comments, who made them. It just has to get expanded. I'll clean it up so you don't have all the information, but it's all in here. So it just needs to get.
They're all in one chapter, in one folder.
Yes, it's all going to be in one folder and it's an Excel spreadsheet. And you can see that it has the entire dialogue. So you can go through, you can make your own notes about it. And then we, from there, oops, oh, I see.
So have you taken those and put them in the actual chapters as comments?
Yes.
Not as separate comments necessarily, because a lot of them were just saying, well, this was not clear, or you should expand upon that. That was the flavor of a lot of these comments. So that's what we did, as opposed to making them individual points. There was one about cemeteries.
Yes. So I'm going to open.
That became a paragraph.
Right. So here, I'll show you.
Because that was a great suggestion by Karen Care.
Right. This one.
PJ,
Yeah,
do you have a professional editor who
not yet,
going through this when you finish?
not yet.
Looking at it and making sure it all.
Way at the end. Way at the end, not yet. No, we want to keep this very draft for a good period of time.
There is a plan to do that though at the end.
Yes.
There will be.
Just from my editorial experience in publishing, ideally, you have somebody that has nothing to do with the town or with the.
Yes.
Basically, is a good editor, going through and pointing out, after you make all the changes, this all kind of, does it work? It all go through.
Right.
Feeding back to you.
Yeah.
Without it, you end up with all the different writing styles. And leaving in, people may suggest you don't come back later on.
Right.
That's not a hard thing to do, just have an editor.
Yeah. And they can also check out the formatting and everything else that keeps getting jumbled. Every time you put something into SharePoint, it seems to change it, and then you download it and it changes again. So it's kind of a bit of a nightmare.
It's not asking.
So we do definitely have a plan to get someone to come in and make sure it's all cohesive, that it works together and that there's no major contradictions. Because there can be overlap within or between chapters, there should be, but they shouldn't contradict each other, chapters. So we'll have a review of that. So
Can I just interrupt you for 1 minute? When people are speaking in the room and you have your shared screen on, it's not clear who's speaking. Thanks.
oh, okay.
Right.
Sorry.
Well, yeah, and we really will hold comments until the end.
So these are just a few of the things that were added. So the Presbyterian Colonial Cemetery, Karen Care gave that suggestion. I thought it was a pretty good one. So I did write a small paragraph about that. So go through, look at it, see if you have suggestions. And then the other thing that I kind of added to was the Taylor's Island, the cabin, because somehow I think that got abbreviated. I think it used to be longer. So I fleshed that out a little bit with a little more of its history. Let's see, where else do we need to change? It's all the same. It really goes down. Don't get nauseous. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. All right. So this stays the same. Goals and objectives stays the same. Action items. So for this one, what I did was, because chapter 77 is already in the town code, I enumerated the points in chapter 77 that are essentially the mission of that group. So it kind of outlines what their role is. So to coordinate and advocate actions for managing historic resources as set forth in the comprehensive plan. So that could be researching the H zone, It would, so
It could be.
yeah, it could be included in that, to undertake a program of serving and documenting the town's historic landmarks and historic districts within the town. Recommendations for designation of identified historic landmarks. Increasing public awareness of the value of historic preservation by developing and participating in public education programs, by preparing a manual describing the town's history and highlighting the distinctiveness of the island's historic landmarks and neighborhoods, suggesting guidelines for building in harmony with that inheritance. And then making recommendations to town government concerning utilization of state, federal, or private funds to promote the preservation of historic landmarks and districts within the town. So that's sort of the charge of that commission in chapter 77. So I thought that was a really good outline to kind of give a guide for where that goes. And then, as a note, the committee can also help the Historical Society updating their Shelter Island House registry. It kind of falls in there and outline scope of work. And then the comment on the H zone that we updated was, in an effort to preserve our rich heritage and distinct sense of place, the town should explore the possibility of creating a zone H for the Shelter Island Heights National Historic District and possibly a floating historic H zone for other appropriate properties on the island. Such a district would be an overlay on existing zones, which would in turn trigger an additional level of review. The floating H designation, if adopted by the town, will not change, supersede, downzone, or alter the uses permitted in any existing zoning district on the island. So I'm just waiting for clarification on whether or not that meets some of the questions, and we can review it, make comments. And then for the Heights, this could include appointing Architectural Preservation Review Committee to consult and review proposed changes, modifications, demolitions, and new construction in the historic district. So that
Can I ask
kind
a
of
technical question about this? So if you want us to go in and reread the edits that you've created on these to comment further, or, I mean, where are we? All right, and so when you post these documents that are now called number 2 Cultural Research Workshop 1 edits, then that's the newest version of that list of document, correct?
Right.
So we
Correct.
should be focusing on that one, not any of the previous ones.
Right.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's clear. Okay.
and I'll send out an email. I was just waiting to get some clarification before I sent them right back out to the whole committee because I wanted to get the notes back. We requested clarification from people.
The question.
And let's see, cackle.
We're going to wait till the end of the meeting. That's really that's the format in all of
And,
town.
catch
I'm
the
sorry, but-
encourage the program for preservation easements,
Try to get
Cackle
this
Hill
out.
as an example. And then a new one that I added based on the Presbyterian Cemetery, which may or may not be a good suggestion, you guys can let me know, was I wrote to continue to maintain and preserve the historic records contained in the headstones and monuments located in our historic cemeteries. And Karen clarified that the DAR has actually been the one who has been maintaining those headstones. So they've kind of taken on that role, although it is sort of a municipal job. So that's just something to do. And then I also added here the map done by Dodson and Finkler about historic places on the island. And I know that with a lot of the maps that they had done, we had questions, comments, there was things that didn't quite add up, but I thought I would add it as a reference so people could make suggestions, see if we even need something like this included, just let us know. And then I did add the click here to submit your comment. So if you're reading this and you want to make a comment, I kept it a live link. So that might be easier to keep track of, suggestions when it comes to actually changing significant sections or something. I thought that would be helpful for everybody.
So you want us to use this link, not commenting sidebars?
You can do both. You can comment directly on the document, but I know some people have trouble doing that. So for people who have trouble commenting directly on the document, they can do it this way, and then we'll go back and incorporate it. Just trying to give everybody as much opportunity to comment as possible.
Is that a new hand from John?
Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing so we can see the people. John, you have your hand up?
Yes, just a question with the H zone. Nothing, I'm not against that. I think it's a wonderful idea, but does it also open us up to the possibility of someone having, for example, an architectural significant zone? For example, we have some very unique architecturally advanced looking homes very modern by very famous architects that are on the island, would they then lend themselves to a spot zone for them? For example, there's been one of those a house that was torn down, but it was a significant the architecture design was really unique, and it was torn down. So I don't know if this is important. I don't want to open a can of worms, but I'm just tossing it out there.
I think it's a good question. I think any zoning changes are going to have to go through significant, public input and review, and it's going to happen after the comprehensive plan at the town board level. So I think that whatever we put here is the framework for the expectations of the town board's actions in the future. So, we should take all of that into consideration. Petra?
So this is really more of a comment and a question. I spent a little time this weekend going through the Southold Comprehensive Plan, which was adopted, and one of the things they talked about was the success because it was, a lot of community input. But I also looked at how they wrote kind of their goals and objectives. And I think this is maybe the question as well as the comment, which is the level of specificity and the language, right? So instead of could or can, it is establish this, do this. And they sort of also had short and long-term goals. So I throw that out as consideration for our committee, because I think one of the reasons we all joined this is we want to have this comprehensive plan be adopted. But I'm guessing that was one of the factors that contributed to its success. So for those who haven't taken a look at it, I encourage people to take a look at it, because I really like the level of specificity and actionable items.
Well, okay, Petra, I noticed too when I read it that, that should, shall, and I actually wanted it to be a little bit more open-ended. I wonder how everyone else feels about that specific language in the action plan, in the action points. Just fire off.
But we also have our action items. We have goals and then we have action items. So we have challenges and we have the goals and then we have action items. They are ranked in a sense just there. And then in the list, they would also be ranked.
But I think this is more specific to language that Petra is bringing.
Yeah, I think it's more, instead of like consider possibility, I think it's stronger recommendations and clearer.
Right.
I think that, may I say something? I think one of the, to speak to that point, Petra, Southold has a very big department, including, I believe, several people who are specifically planning.
They have a whole planning department.
So they have a whole, okay.
Yeah,
a whole planning department to attend to that. I mean, this, of course, could have been helped by independent consultants to the comprehensive plan, but we do not have that resource.
Okay, Sean?
Yeah, to piggyback on Petra, I think it's important to keep in mind that this is an organizational level document. So I think that type of language is warranted. And it's really important for us to set our clear intent of what is desired by the community at large. We're not going to figure everything out in detail. That will come. That's why we need to be very careful and methodical in setting those intents at an organizational level. Those words, establish this, and so forth. So I think that language is appropriate for this level of document that touches every aspect of the town.
Yeah, I think that also we can get more specific once we have more of the chapters complete, because we'll see how they interact with each other. And I think once we have that picture, we'll really be able to nail down and get more precise with our action items. So I think it's going to be, more of a big picture, like as we're finalizing things, really nailing down the things that, we can be more specific in and more pointed in. But I think right now, because we're still kind of establishing the basis for all those things, it's hard to be super specific on all of them and to be very pointed, because we still have chapters that are missing that are going to impact how those action items are going to lay out in the end, Peter?
Kind of just blending Petra and Sean's points. I think it's going to depend a lot on the level of consensus on certain action items, where if obviously there's different opinions on this committee as to certain issues. And there may not be as much difference on some other issues.
Right.
Where it may be really easy to establish a more concrete action item as opposed to something that's more wishy-washy for future consideration.
And also in the workshops.
But we'll see that
Public
at
workshop.
the end, when we go back, so much of what we've done in the chapters is backward looking to set where we are. And it's really that forward looking component, I think, that at least interests me and like a bunch of others, that'll be easier to refine at the end.
Right.
So
And I think a lot of these chapters are going to like play into each other, but it's a matter of getting them done to a point where now we can go, okay, so we have this action item in natural resource and it's going to impact this chapter in this way. So now we can hone these action items, accordingly. So it makes sense and it's not conflicting with each other. So that's going to be a big part, is going through and making sure that we're not contradicting ourselves in the plan. Because, that would be counterproductive. Yeah, knock on wood.
separate goal of the plan.
Exactly. The goal of the plan is to define a clear contour and not affording
Internal consistency.
Yeah.
What?
All right. So those were kind of the
Next
big
chapter
ones.
or one, was there anything, transportation?
Well, with the
We
transportation chapter,
added jitney
we added,
because I don't like the word bus.
so.
Oh, she's not here. Oh, she is here.
She's, so transportation, I'm just going to pull it up. And I'm just going to go to the action items because there really was no text that changed.
I don't think so.
It was really action items that were commented on.
Mhm.
This one. So we clarified and included the, let's see. There is some clarification on restoring the right-of-way shoulder along the roadways. The town board should consider the adoption of a code defining and maintaining the right-of-way. Many intersections have been losing sight to oncoming traffic from improper plant locations, as well as requiring the highway department to maintain those areas. Most right-of-ways around the island are about 10 feet wide. Proper plant placement should be or would be half the width of a mature plant plus 10 feet from the edge of the paved road. In theory, a mature tree or shrub would only reach the property line. So that's a clarification on that point. And then we included the adopt a complete streets approach to town roads, addressing all forms of travel. In conjunction with this effort, consider an island-wide speed limit of not more than 30 miles per hour as a way of ensuring the safety of all street users. And then the Complete Streets Act has been incorporated here. It's actually a link in the document, so you can click it and go and see the entirety of the Complete Streets law. It's chapter 398 in Laws of New York. It was signed into law on August 15th of 2011 and requires state, county, and local agencies to consider the convenience and mobility of all users when developing transportation projects that receive state and federal funding. So it's a very comprehensive review. So we've included that so people can look at it.
Does that include, does the street, for complete street include parking?
It includes
I
all
remember.
of that. It includes-
Okay.
Yes. So we included that because it's a very comprehensive review. And then in item 11, explore passenger-only launch service to and from Greenport to facility early morning travel, for example, the 4:30 Hampton Jitney, and late night returns. And then in addition, explore the possibility of providing a around the island jitney service for folks who do not have or wish to use their own vehicles. So that's BJ's way of saying a bus, as that was brought up as a recommendation.
Yeah.
So people can, read that comment, your ideas, considerations. And those were really, and then also consider conducting a study of the ferry traffic in order to ascertain percentage of traffic that is residents, tourists, day trippers, bridge travelers, et cetera. So we have a better understanding of how the island is being used and how it's being traversed. And then those were really the only two chapters that had significant changes. There was no real comment on the.
Excuse me, I believe I had made a comment about bicycles. Was that also, is that incorporated in the language? Because we were discussing the 98, 90 planning language versus the proposed language, which was much more vague than the old plan language
you
that
did. You
asked
had
for
a
a
very-
study in the committee.
2.
Is that point two? Did I
Point
miss
two?
it when I read them? Hold
Seek
on.
funding for a bicycle path study and construction. Prod the state for aid in developing a safer island for cyclists. That's A. Point 2B is establish a bicycle safety task force to develop a program for safety and traffic education for visiting bicyclists, working with both ferry companies, the Chamber of Commerce, and bicycle organizations. I thought
Very
we
good, thank
captured.
you. I don't have the document in front of me.
No worry, I thought we captured it.
Screen, so-
Yeah, because we did go back and look at
Yeah,
night.
we did. We took that right out of the 94 and put it in because it was very clear and concise in the 94 version.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
No problem. All right. All right, so those are the suggestions that we incorporated into the chapters. So, check them out, make notes, comments. Use the comment button, or you can put the comments directly into the chapter itself. Okay. There we go. Okay. All right, so then the next housing chapter, the chapters we have left are recreation and conservation, natural resources, land use and zoning, governance, housing, economic development, community facilities, and infrastructure. I was thinking community facilities and infrastructure because there's a good section on that that's actually a quality of life section. It's, let me see.
Almost a precursor.
Yeah, it sort of works with chapter 1. And somehow let's see, it shifted. Community institutions and quality of life. And that covers things like the school district, the public library, American Legion, youth center, churches.
This is where Artsy would go.
This is Artsy would go in here. It's actually already included in here. Annual community events, Friends of Music, Perlman, studios and galleries, Artsy, artists on the island, challenges to quality of life on the island. How do we protect community character and sense of place? So I thought this would be a good one to work on, along with, I have the demographic chapter that I have been going through and updating the census.
Quick question, what does NPV stand for?
Nelson
Pope Voorhees. Sorry? Nelson Pope and Voorhees. They're the consultants working on the community housing plan.
Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, we shouldn't abbreviate that. That should just be that next time. Sorry about that.
So which document should we focus on in that folder on community facilities and infrastructure? The one you've edited most recently?
What I'll do is I will send them out and I will note which one is for editing. I'll make it very clear.
Okay.
I'll make it super clear. Because the formatting is all funky right now. So I'm going to fix it. I'll add the link so you can comment easily. And so that it's easier to comment on. But yes, the one that you're currently looking at, it has like a whole art section in it. So I think that, to answer your email from earlier, I think it works better in this chapter.
So we're going to look at recreation and the community institutions.
No, I think we'll save recreation and conservation areas because that'll go better with the natural resources chapter doing those. So that was originally what we were thinking, but after talking with BJ today, I think the community facilities and infrastructure work better with the chapters that we've already done because it really gives a more comprehensive picture of the town, how it, it just town character.
Good. Sounds good.
So I thought that would be a good one. And also considering that the housing chapter is happening, it's the community at large and expresses a lot of that. So we'll work on that one.
So it's number 7.
Yes.
Okay.
And also that Meg is working on 1, and there's a bit of meat there already, which is again, the snapshot. There's really no action points at the end of 1. but we would encourage you guys, everyone to read it and comment.
It's the background and demographics chapter.
Right.
So it's the statistics, it's the census information. So I've been working on updating that with the census information that we have now. And it's, you know, when they originally did it, they followed the basic census. So it's not too hard to update with the census. So it's chapter 1, growth and change. So that is the editing version of growth and change. Because we've already done the vision statement, so it kind of would follow that.
That's ready for us to jump into, or?
Yeah. I still have some census stuff to update. For the most part, it's pretty, and you'll see my notes, like I'm waiting for meeting with the school to get data from this last year, things like that, but it's noted.
Coming out.
Yes.
It's very slow.
It's very slow. But those two things I think we can work on now, and I think they would be very productive.
Yeah,
So
it would be great to get.
The key is to look for the one that's been edited most recently as your major, as what the working document, correct?
Correct.
We are calling them the editing version.
Right.
Okay,
And it'll
good.
say editing version. So I think those are the two, that's what we'll work on next. And I will send out an email with the direct link to it, so you don't have to go and find it. I'll also send out a direct link to the comments that we're getting online so that you can see those as well. I haven't gotten any new ones in the last few days. So whenever we get new ones, I'll add them in, and then I'll send a reminder that they're there. And then I think that's good for that, right?
Mhm.
And then, so calendar of public workshops, try to look at the dates that we have available.
And we're
And
gonna email that you all got today, I think.
yes, I emailed them all out today. So try to get back to us by Friday with what dates work so that we can come up with a better schedule for when we want public input
Okay,
back
good.
and when we want. So, you know, that way.
And get
have
the
it.
word out too. We were so
Yeah.
pressed for time this last time that, you know, we got an ad in the paper and we said, put up flyers, and I thought, and lots of social media, but it would be better if we had more of a lead time. It's the goal. It's not a command. I also want to say here, because we're cruising on here into the roundtable, Petra had to leave. She apologizes. In an email says her suggestion is to break our comprehensive committee into smaller groups and assign chapters to dig deeper.
Mhm.
I don't know. I think it's a great suggestion,
I like it.
actually.
Yeah, I like it. Yes, I like it. So we'll come up with a plan for how to do that. So it's effective and we don't send people off on a goose chase or something.
Right.
Giving them a task that's not really achievable. I want to make sure that it's, you know, achievable goals for everybody. Okay.
Anyone else? That was the intro to the roundtable.
Okay. Bill Duro, you have your hand up? Nobody else has.
Yes,
nobody
thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you for all your hard work. I've got a couple points I'd like to make. I've just look at my notes here. So at the end, I'll ask Mr. Keeley just a question, but I'm going to start out with. And I think Lily mentioned this. I mean, I really do believe that the Comprehensive Planning Committee should have a qualified planning consultant, not the same one as doing all the other stuff, who's extensively experienced in comprehensive plans, especially our kind of town. Nobody knows what they don't know. And doing this without expert advice is beyond me. I'd also like to read from something published by New York State government in 2015, because I think it's important when we refer back to old comprehensive plans, we recognize that the law has changed and perspectives have changed. So the word comprehensive in this document written by, let's see, the person is Rosanna Rosado, Secretary of State, under her direction around zoning and the comprehensive plan, James L. Kuhn, Local Government Technical Series. I think it's a document everybody should read. A comprehensive plan is defined as covering a matter under consideration completely or nearly completely, accounted for or comprehending all or virtually all pertinent considerations. And plan has been defined as a method of achieving something, a way of carrying out a design. So taken together, it intimates that the method proposed must be capable of being discerned and must be inclusive. So I just think everyone should take a look at that as you are thinking about how you're approaching these kind of things. I want to go back to a comment I think that Ms. Iannafola made. I think open-ended language is incredibly dangerous and just gives license to future officials do all kinds of things that people didn't really intend to do, like was currently being considered with TDRs on the conservation land. And then lastly, to Mr. Keeley, I would like to ask him, does it say that the housing plan must be done by an independent body? Because I think that's what you're implying, as opposed to it just needs to be included in the plan. I'm not a lawyer. I do work with lots of lawyers all the time. And I haven't had a chance to read that section that Mr. Keeley read out, but I do think it bears further examination before everyone just accepts the way that he described it. But I'm happy to hear from Mr. Keeley.
Okay, well, he's not on anymore, so we'll forward your question to him and have him get back in touch with you.
And it is Kylie.
It's, yeah, so we'll do that. We'll get him in touch with you for clarification.
I'm sorry if I mispronounced his last name, Kylie. My name is actually pronounced Darrow, not Darrow, but I get that all the time.
Sorry.
No worries, no worries.
As somebody with a multi-syllabic name, it's part of my life.
It's Iannafola.
Very nice, Naples.
All right. Anyone in the room? Jan, if you raised your hand.
Okay, so I have a question to this.
This is Jan Sudol speaking. Sorry.
I have a question regarding the revised chapter 2. The workshop raised the issue that it was not clear that those zones,
The H zone?
H zones,
Yep.
were to be floating, were to be overlay zones.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So now it seems like you added a sentence or two clarifying this for other areas of Shelter Island, but not for the heights.
No, for the heights as well.
Yeah.
That the H would be an overlay for all of it.
Because if you bring it back on my screen,
Yeah.
I've seen it, the floating zone, it's gonna be overlay zone, but it doesn't say the same for the heights.
Okay.
So
we'll
that needs to
clarify
be
that.
absolutely clear that
Yes.
the H, first of all, H zone has to be defined as historical zone everywhere, not, let's say, hotel zone.
Right.
And number two, that it applies to all areas of the island.
True.
It's overlay and it's historical. The heights, all other areas,
Okay.
just to make sure that it's absolutely clear.
Yeah. Hold on, let me just pull it up and. So I think we're covering, so in an effort to preserve our rich heritage and distinct sense of place, the town should explore the possibility of creating
Paragraph 2.
in this, they have the heights.
Paragraph 2.
She's
So
reading paragraph 2.
in an effort to preserve our rich heritage, a distinct sense of place, the town should explore the possibility of creating a Zone H for the Shelter Island Heights National Historic District and possibly a floating historic H zone for other appropriate properties on the island. Such a district would be an overlay on existing zones, which would in turn trigger an additional level of review. The floating H designation, if adopted by the town, will not change, supersede, downzone, or alter the uses permitted in any existing zoning district on Shelter Island.
So it's right there. You'd like it to say the heights, H zone.
I think
and
it
the floating
covers
zone.
anything,
The
yeah.
last sentence there, that's where you'd like it to say the heights as well. Because you think it
Well, I mean,
confusing.
just so it's.
I think it covers everything.
That the historical age zone, and it has to be clearly defined historical age zone, does not replace the whatever zoning is there.
Correct, correct. I think that it says, I think it says that clearly, but I think that last sentence, we could add the heights and the floating H zone designation, you know, to your point. Okay, yeah.
Mhm. Okay.
And I love this stuff.
All right. Do you have anything else? I'm going to unshare my screen so that I can see everybody. Okay.
Hey,
Yes.
what other areas?
Sorry, it's Patrick Clipper, just in case people are.
Patrick Clifford. What other areas would possibly qualify to be a special zone. For instance, I heard someone say that it's possible to make a golf course a special zone. Sense to me.
But we could say that, you know, we could do a golf course zone or a hotel zone when we get to those appropriate chapters, right? But I don't think that's happening. I mean, right?
I mean, that's an action item that would have to be discussed when we get to the zoning section. I mean, this is historic specific because we're in the History Channel, so
Yeah,
the History Channel.
makes sense, right?
Yeah, but
I think you could. I think the answer to that is you could, but would?
theoretically, but I don't think it would serve.
Yeah, I don't think anybody here.
But when you get a special zone, I could imagine, what do you get? What's the benefit to say, I understand the height of the bed.
Right.
What benefit do you get from that?
Typically, I think it would be additional regulation on that zone. It's not usually a down zoning. If you're adding a zone, it's usually an additional regulation to that zone. I mean, it
is, but it also could mean, so, for instance, I'm in a C zone. So, I'm just using this as like, because I think this might be relevant. So I have a 10-foot side yard setback. And one of my neighbors wanted to change that to an A zone. Because, you know, somebody was putting in a pool too close to her for her comfort. But one of her points, which was a good one, was, well, now, whenever you want to do anything, she was saying that we wouldn't have to go to the ZBA as often. We would have, no, that's it. We would have to go to the ZBA. That was one of the counter arguments. We would have to go to the ZBA. We have to go to the ZBA very often because we are
non-conforming.
Right. So that would be one instance where if you created a zone, let's just say a hotel zone, for an example, and all the hotels were put into that zone, even though they're not contiguous, then I think then you would take away a level of review in that case. Perhaps it could result in that. It could result in the other way, but it could result in the other thing, which is
regulations for that zone.
Yeah, it would
that zone, right? So you could make it stricter, or you could make it easier with less review. I think
My concern is making areas easier, not having to go to the DBA. That might be easier to the DBA, but not good for the town.
Not good for the town. Exactly.
Yeah, I don't really think anybody's in favor of down zoning. I don't think that would pass. I don't think that the town would let that.
And in the workshops, I think we'd be tarred and
Yeah, and it's never been discussed in any of our meetings.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I share the concerns, and ever since the famous ZBA memo
What's the famous CBA?
dated September 7th to 2021, which proposed, which suspiciously look like down zoning. We're on the lookout for this kind of thing. So, and you state on the record, the intent of any zoning changes would be not to down zone, but if anything, make it more restrictive.
Personally, but we have a whole committee here, and then we have the whole town.
Yeah.
You know, we're doing the workshops and we have to listen to people. So, I mean.
The CPAC doesn't have the power to change zoning regulations.
Right, just suggesting.
CPAC can suggest, it's basically an enabling document that
Right.
to zoning changes. So
Suggest.
And we
look
have
at this very carefully.
Right.
We have to look at zoning coming up.
When we get to the zoning chapter, it'll all be discussed, but I'm not going to make that decision before we even get to a zoning chapter.
Well, that's my next question is, like, you're gonna be doing a lot of chapters. I'm not saying they're not important. Community facilities, infrastructure, natural resources and so forth, but why not jump into the land use and zoning right away?
Because I'd like to have a generic, like the environmental impact study done. Honestly, I'd like to have that impact study so we can see where the sensitive
What?
on the entire environment of Shelter Island. It's a generic environmental impact study, which identifies your sensitive zones from, it gives you a comprehensive view of the island and what you're looking at and dealing with. So I think it would be beneficial to have that complete before we do things like look at zoning.
But my understanding is that this RFP is about first TDR and then environmental impact of TDR.
Right.
What else? What is there? What else is there that would
Give
be?
you an entire comprehensive environmental study of the island. It's a comprehensive environmental study of the island, so it'll have a ton of information.
Which is relevant.
More information is better than less information.
Well, I think this is what's on everybody's mind, and I think this should be tackled as soon as possible, not wait till the end.
Yes.
Wayne,
Duly noted.
all right. Anybody else?
One last.
Patrick?
Why wouldn't you wait to have the environmental study done to finish the comprehensive plan and then have it all one? Now, I recognize it's not a referendum thing, but it seems like that's one of the key components, and I agree with you, you have to have that. To really know where you're gonna put housing, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Why not just, you said earlier, trying to move it up, which is good. Why not get that done, at the same time you're working on the plan, then basically put them all together as one and put it forward.
That is the
Isn't that what we're doing?
goal. That's the goal. That's the goal. That's why we're reviewing how we're gonna get it done.
Quicker.
Just speaking. I say that it could take all the way into the 3 or 4 months after.
That's,
And we're looking at ways to change that.
Yeah, okay.
That's, yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah, that's good.
I'm sorry, Meg, who was just speaking?
That was Patrick Clifford. Stephen Jacobs, you have your hand up?
Hi, yes. 3 hopefully brief points. First, after last Monday's meeting, when I was surprised to hear the suggestion that you folks have to incorporate the housing plan created by another group into the comprehensive plan, I did a little bit of independent research and came up with the provision of the state town law that your town attorney cited. I was frankly surprised because the mission and composition of your group seems much broader than that of the Community Housing Fund Advisory Board. But be that as it may, the law is the law. And from what I can see, I think the town attorney correctly interpreted it as saying you can't rewrite the plan, but you can massage it. On the other hand, I do not agree with his suggestion that it's premature to talk about TDRs. TDRs, in fact, were mentioned in the very first poster board at the Community Housing Open House. And by the way, I should preface this by saying that I'm probably perhaps one of the few people involved in this tonight that has not come to a strong view on TDRs. I frankly still have more questions than I do have answers. But I don't agree that it's premature. It's obviously already in the mix in terms of the housing proposal. It's part of the town board's vision. The town board is pressing for the referendum in November to create a decades-long income stream. And that is going to be voted on if the referendum is not put off before the generic environmental impact statement, even if it is rushed up as it was suggested it was going to be. Final comment is I may have missed this because I had to step away for a while, but I had made last week both a written and oral objection to a provision of the vision statement that talked about the need to balance the protection of natural and cultural resources with the accommodation of growth.
we did change.
Okay, then I will take a look at it and hold any further comments. Thank you.
Sorry, we should have pointed it out, but we did change it, and yeah,
I
please look at
forgot that we
that.
did make that shift. So
But let me also say, I get, that one thing I do know about the TDRs, they're not necessary for community housing. They're just,
We know this, right?
you know, we can do community housing without them. And we can do community housing without the referendum passing. Community housing is sort of separate. It's all about, I guess, the speed of the, you know, I mean, but both of, they're not
Having a separate.
exclusive. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
nice.
so,
It
you
would
know,
help, but you know, there's other ways to finance it, that the referendum, if it doesn't pass. Right.
Yeah. Jan, did you have one more thing? So you have maybe.
Yeah, so basically, just to follow up on several comments here regarding TDRs and so forth, why not discuss this right away? Like if, as was just said here, they are not necessary for community housing, then why do you need? What are you gonna use them for? Give us some examples and discuss this upfront and early on.
Yeah.
And if there's TDRs, in which chapter would they fit? Land use and.
It would be land use and zoning.
Not February, but it's around.
Oh, people on Zoom. I think that's
I know.
just a false flag right there. Or what do they call that these days? Gaslighting?
People are on file and they paying a lot less attention.
Well, it's not important to them, and I can't help them. I must say. You know, please stay tuned. That would be good.
Howard. Oh, Howard, you had your hand up?
Yes, I did. Thank you. First of all, I think this is a very good meeting, and I've read the 4 chapters. I haven't commented on them yet, but I will. But my object here is, when did you say that the 2020 census will be finalized with the demographics of the 800 and something new residents?
Yeah, so we do have the 2020 census. I'm working on updating the demographics section based off that census information. But even then, you know, it's not great data. Census is always weird for us because we have so many people who identify as, you know, it depends on where they're claiming their primary residence. But we had a lot of people switch to here during the pandemic. So, you know, trying to sort through all the data. But that chapter I'm going to post so that people can go through it and look at it and see what we have so far. But we do have the 2020 census data.
Good.
So that's going to be one of the chapters that comes up next. We're going to post that online.
The other items that I have is on the infrastructure. Never has the comprehensive plan addressed the power requirements of the island, which we know 5 years ago, we had a serious problem here. We had the generators and we had to pull a new cable. Well, we tried twice, we finally got it in. And also on the internet on the island, those 2 infrastructure, they're very important to the island for all types of growth that we're gonna have. I'm sure we're gonna have another 700 or 800 people coming to the island in the next census. So I think those 2 items should be addressed. And I just saw online, PSE&G just gave their 2.0 report to LIPA, and they're open for comments July 27th on a Zoom. So I was wondering, I had asked Joe Fenora if they had any updated data on our demands on the island, or and Brian Sherman. And they don't have anything on that, which I was surprised, because this is a very serious problem that we face here on the island, is the power. We had the 1 feeder replaced, but we don't know what the status of the other 2 feeders coming, one from the north and one from the south. We know the one from the south is very weak. We don't have that much power available. But I think somebody has to talk to PSE&G. I looked at their report, which unfortunately is like 300 pages long. And the only thing they mention about Shelter Island is the storm hardening, which means clearing the trees, which is a very important thing. But as you know, last week we had Silver Beach. So it's still something that has to go on. And some of our cables here are probably about 50 years old. I don't know when they plan to replace them, but the life of them, it's getting to the end of their lifespan. So I would just like to have those two items addressed when we do the section on infrastructure.
Yeah, we will. And I know that the Green Options Committee actually has a lot of very good information on this and some potential ways to solve this problem. There's actually a study that they're looking to possibly get funding for in the next year or two that would help make Shelter Island energy independent. It's a study that's been done in a whole bunch of other islands like Mount Desert Island and Acadia and island off of Washington. It's a kind of a federally funded program for island specific for energy independence and energy security, kind of to make sure that you don't end up in that situation where you are powerless. So they've been doing a lot of work on that. So I'm going to actually kind of reach out to them for some of their suggestions and input too, because I think it'll be very helpful.
Well, thank you. I'll talk to Tim also on that.
He's a good resource. All right. Anybody else? No? Okay. I'm going to make a motion to adjourn. Our next meeting is August 22nd. We do have a public workshop where we're going to be open to the public on August 20th at the Green Expo. So I'll have copies of the chapters out so you can look at, you can do written comment, you can give us verbal feedback, and we'll do our best to incorporate it.
And hopefully these next two chapters will be ready.
Chapters posted online, and I'll have hard copies for people to look at the fair. So please swing by August 20th, Green Expo. Same day as the craft fair at the Legion Hall. We also have the comments open on the website, so that's not going anywhere. You can look at those. I have business cards at Town Hall that have a direct link to the comprehensive plan page. It also has a QR code that helps make it easier to get there. And you can always handwrite your comments and bring them to us. I'm going to put a box in Town Hall for comprehensive plan comments. So if you have written comment and you want to submit them, you can bring them in and drop them off here at Town Hall, and then I'll enter them into the comments section so that everybody can see them digitally. Great. So I just want everyone to know that that's available. Very helpful. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor?
Yay.
All right. Have a lovely
Aye.
day, guys. Thank you. All right. I'm going to go to my brother's birthday dinner. Yay. Happy birthday, 30 minutes late. We're going to go take the form. Yeah, the tavern downstairs in the chair. I just opened it, so let's try it. They're open for dinner.
I'm not going to crash your dinner, but I'm going to show up there because I heard it was open.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know if it was open tonight because it doesn't say anything online yet.
Yeah, I think it is. I think they just haven't gotten to the website stuff yet. Updating all that information.
Mixed